is Wind, Reel, and Print. My name is Kevin.
And my name is Ryan.
And we are stoned and excited to be presenting to you a very important topic. Something that maybe that wasn't the right way to phrase it. But at least for me, I find this really interesting. The framing of like entertainment history through the trajectory of vaudeville and minstrel shows. Mm-hmm. So I picked 4 films that kind of show the history and then contemporizes these ideas, just to spark a conversation for us, relating film history, the art form of film, and then systemic racism in American culture.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Intro us for.
Yeah. So we'll go through all of them right here. And one I had a big question on for Kevin that we kind of talked about before, but I want to talk about it again.
Yep.
So we have just
heavy hitters.
So The Birth of a Nation. And so
if you've ever heard of this one.
Yeah, if you've ever heard of this one. I mean, I think it's important just to say this with this is like, I forgot how racist this movie actually was. Yeah. I thought it was like, okay, there's blackface. Like, that's bad. Yeah. And we'll see it throughout. It's a sign of the times a bit when it comes to these. Right. But this was like painting black people as like evil. Right. Which is really insanely bad.
Right. And for film, for history, grander American history, this film is actually responsible for creating
the new iteration of the KKK.
Well, that creating the KKK, but this was what helped formulate a lot of racist ideas about black people in this country. And you see a lot of these sort of sentiments being used in contemporary media today and the way they describe black people and stuff like that. And even in films too, there's a critique of these sorts of characters in contemporary movies and stuff. So,
it's so deeply ingrained, and it's horrible, and it is especially horrible. There's a few things about all of these movies that you look. Mm-hmm. I mean, Gummo, which is a movie we'll talk about. That's the one that feels very off in some ways, but Bamboozled, for example, you could absolutely see aspects of that definitely happening today. Right. Even though that's a comedy and that it's lampooning a lot of these things, but it's still, there is a very clear, oh my God, we're not that far off from so many of these things. Right. And Birth of a Nation, a perfect example. And it's also important in film history, which says a lot about these. I mean, 1915 is when this came out.
It's the beginning of movies.
Exactly. And then it also it was giant, and you could see how I've never seen in other films before, just the grandness, it's so modern in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure.
There's so much about it. Yes. Yeah. And those are the few positive things you can say about it is just that it has that it has those qualities. Yeah. And then it uses it. And I forget what director said this, but that it informed, there are so many amazing things about it, but it decides to go in this other direction. It's just insulting and sad. Right. And that's definitely how I feel about this movie is that D.W. Griffith has this ability and this eye for this really art grand epic vision, and especially to be at the beginning of film and to see that and to see something, and then to be kind of the one that forms it, and then
be one of the worst people ever.
And then decide to make this because it matters, and I think that's what kind of goes through a lot of these movies. It matters what you're pointing your camera at. Yeah. It matters what you're saying. You have a choice in all of these, and his choice and everyone on set's choice and everyone involved's choice was
even the actors and stuff.
Yeah, even the actors. There is this quality about it, and it's actually quite wild. And it's just a quality that kind of goes through a number of these films.
Yeah, for sure.
To go on to the next one, as we're kind of moving through, is The Jazz Singer. One of the first films to really, or I don't know, maybe it was the first. I don't think it was specifically actually the first one to use audio in the medium. I think there might have been something else, but I think this was like the first like commercial thing that basically brought.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Kind of brought dialogue into it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how they did some of the things. Like you could tell, like some of the bits were shot on set.
Yeah.
Like they actually did have a mic there and everything. And I should look up. They might have images. I'm so curious what the sound recording device looked like.
Yeah. What
at the beginning.
Was their first thing?
God, it's gotta be so weird. But then you have like them literally like singing over, and that's kind of how it uses that. Like
the sound stuff.
The sound stuff is to like pull it into songs and things like that. And it was like, oh, that's an interesting, rudimentary, like clever way to ease that in. And then it was really nice when the dialogue came in. It's like, oh my gosh, wow, it's a movie. It's kind of weird. It had a Wizard of Oz kind of effect
magic
of like,
feel,
this kind of like, oh, this is what is possible.
Sure. Yeah, because from what I remember, it does still kind of sit in the silent film.
It's mostly silent.
Yeah.
It's almost there's maybe 3 times that you hear them actually speaking.
Right. It's very rare, and they like choose specific moments. I feel like and
it usually is around a musical number. They don't just bring it in for anything. There's some musical thing happening, and and the music, and whenever he plays piano, that's that time it always changes.
Right.
And I think for most of the movie, you don't really know where it's going. Like you don't really know that it's about to land.
Yeah.
And then it goes in the huge emotional crux of the film when he is basically deciding how he wants to spend his life.
Yeah.
He's doing it in blackface.
Yeah.
It's wild. My mouth was on the floor.
Right.
That there was a time that people could look at this and be like, oh, I can take this seriously. Like him crying in blackface. I can look at that and feel like, oh, sad.
Like emotional.
Yeah, emotional about it. It was like, what is happening? It was crazy. It was like watching a movie made by like aliens. It just felt so odd and strange, and definitely gave a window into like who they thought the audience was, maybe who the audience was.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely says something about like race hierarchy, I feel like, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Too, with like the detriment of this character. Like the idea of him hitting his lowest point is like attributed to being in blackface. That says a lot about like what his parents think about black people, or you know, what society even too, if this is like an acceptable film of the time, right?
Yeah. It was just insane. And I think there's also, I think their portrayal of Jewish people is also very insulting as well. And it's just all around, like it uses, I imagine that during the time these feelings were out and about. Like people definitely were extremely anti-Semitic, and I mean that led to a lot of things, and then definitely were anti-black.
For sure.
And racist.
Yep.
And just use, I mean, it's another, like, we'll watch old movies and sometimes we'll be like, oh, I understand that someone was supposed to laugh at that. Maybe it wasn't for me, like, but I get it. That's a joke for the time. And this had a lot of that. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to laugh at this Jewish guy for just like doing these things and stuff. The only like funny joke was that everyone bought him a scarf. Like I was like, oh, okay, sure. That was like the only time I like chuckled a little bit. I'm like, oh, funny.
Yeah, to me, I felt no emotions with a lot of this.
Yeah. And I don't blame you.
Just felt like a story.
Yeah.
But I didn't kind of notice, I don't know. I feel like there's a narrative of jazz during this era of like representing like a rebellion against tradition and conservatism.
Yeah. It definitely meant something. And you could tell, I mean, with just how mad the dad got that his son was doing jazz, it very quickly paints like, oh my God, this is like a
real thing.
Yeah, this is so bad. They thought it was like devil music.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. It was like an interesting narrative. You think of jazz as like this super like high luxury, like pretentious art form.
Yeah.
But it definitely has like a rock star kind of SoundCloud rapper like
weird
connotation for that time period. You know? Yeah. It's funny. It was interesting.
Yeah. Well, we'll get more on that.
Yeah, sure.
Third on the list is Gummo.
Yeah, Gummo.
1997.
One of my favorite movies.
Yes. This is a Kevin fave.
Yeah, certified.
This one definitely feels like the odd man out.
Yeah.
You know, I was expecting blackface to show up at some point.
Yeah.
Never did.
Definitely has that.
Yeah, definitely. It was like, it's going to happen.
Capability of doing it.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there is a point with like some black characters that they are portrayed as
badly,
portrayed badly. But I don't know if it felt like the white characters would do the same thing too. It didn't necessarily feel like that, but you know, I don't know
for sure.
But yeah, this one was the one that I was like, I would be very curious to hear Kevin's reason for placement. Do you want to go over that now, or you want to wait?
We can wait.
Okay, let's wait. We'll wait till we get there.
Because I want to give context too of like why you think that as well. Yeah,
exactly. And I've got a lot of things to say about just ones. And maybe it's just about harmony, and what it means. And we kind of went over this before, but what it means to use the camera and what you're filming and all of that.
Yeah, and he's a very problematic character just in general.
Yeah,
like as a person, and I think as a filmmaker too, he's like a provocateur. So he's always like digging in the dirt, you know, like Lars von Trier. I feel like in the same vein of like going there, you know. Yeah,
they definitely feel like they exist in a similar space. Yeah, and maybe it is just one is European and one is American.
For sure,
that's probably
different
what it is.
Sentiments.
Yeah, completely different, but riding that same kind of undercurrent.
Yeah.
And then the last one, my surprise favorite.
Yeah.
Bamboozled by Spike Lee.
I wasn't expecting it to be that like awesome, you know?
Yeah, it was so funny and weird. And like, I really did not like it at first because I've talked about this on the pod and Kevin's poked me about it, about how like quality is very important to me.
Sure,
like I really want to watch things in their highest fidelity possible. I really get a kick off of that. And genuinely, I can like movies more if I watch them in a setting that is
ideal,
that is ideal and it looks good and all of that.
Yeah.
This film is shot on a potato for most of it.
Well, it's shot on multiple cameras.
Yes, it is shot on multiple cameers.
But its primary camera was a potato.
Yes, the primary was a potato, and I was just like, no, I can't. No. But then at a certain point, it brings film in, and it does it in an interesting way and purposeful.
Yeah,
and that made me that helped elevate it in my mind. Is like, okay, Spike Lee has all the skills. He can get access to cameras. He can do all of these things.
Yeah.
Definitely saved a lot of money doing it that way.
For sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
And probably is easier to get a movie made when you do it. But it still felt like it was like, okay, there's a reason for this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a choice.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, because I feel like Bamboozled is super, I'd never heard of it before.
Yeah.
Deep cut. Yeah. It follows like
TV studio.
I forget what they're called, but this TV studio, big TV studio, think like NBC, ABC, that big. And they are looking for, network. They're looking for the next big show. And we have our main character played by Damon Wayans, Pierre Delacroix, who talks in an insane accent. And I'm happy at a certain point someone comments on it. His dad in it is like, where'd you get that fucking voice?
Yeah.
And then we just move on.
Like this.
Yes. And it's so crazy. And so you can imagine watching this movie at the start, it's just like, this is a nightmare. But so it follows, and then so basically in the style, and Spike Lee is not one to shy away from using film history.
Yeah.
Very similar to the producers.
Yeah.
This story. And it follows basically Damon Wayans' character deciding like he's going to try to prove to them like they make bad choices on the shows they make, and he wants to see them fail by making a minstrel
purposely
show.
Bad. Yeah.
A purposefully bad racist minstrel show that will be a live show that everyone will see.
Yeah.
And very similar to the producers where they put on a show that they want to fail about Hitler. And it ends up being
good,
crazy successful, and everyone loves it. And Mel Brooks is perfect for that. And he's like, just, that was like, I think that was his first film too.
Sure.
And so Spike Lee reaching into that bag, using it in a in a racially important way, that kind of puts that at the forefront and has something to say.
Right.
Because I don't know how much the producers really had to say about society with that or whatever. I mean, maybe there is something to say.
Sure.
But I think it was just meant to be funny. This, like, by that ending montage of like images, because they don't really show historical blackface besides like some, like, Pierre's office gets more and more filled with racist objects.
Well, yeah, it's like memorabilia from the show, I think.
And there are some other things too. Like, he's got a lot of classic things he's gotten,
trinkets and whatever.
Stuff like that all over that are just like
the
slowly
bank
filling up. Yeah, the bank, for example.
Yeah,
the worst CGI you'll ever see in a film. Actually, I take that back. Event Horizon. If anyone's ever seen Event Horizon, watch it again and be in awe that they had CGI that bad. Like, it blows my mind. So Bamboozled, I was just kind of blown away by it. I was like, dang, this
pretty smart.
Yeah, it's really smart. It's very funny and weird, and it's stylish too.
For sure.
We'll get into all this. So let's start.
Yeah.
Let's start at the beginning.
Sure. Yeah.
So, Birth of a Nation.
Right. Well, I also,
You want to add something first?
Yeah, kind of for like some history stuff.
Yes. Oh yeah. Please. Yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like it's I don't know. I feel like it's really interesting to me, like the idea of early American entertainment, and like you can kind of point to minstrel shows and vaudeville as like the precursor of modern entertainment industry. Like the idea of touring, like music acts touring, that comes from this. Like vaudeville basically is like this old timey art form where people would go out and like perform stuff. It's mostly like theatrical, but at a certain point, like you get music involved, and then films get, or like certain performances like minstrel and stuff. But then like it gets into like, and this is where I kind of tie in like exploitation across everything, right? Like circuses are kind of from vaudeville acts as well.
That makes sense.
And the exploitation of animals is kind of rooted in this thing as well. And even like having indigenous Filipinos in circuses, like the kind of pointing
as like the creature, as that
in,
sort of thing.
So kind of like highlighting how racism is rooted in the entertainment industry from the beginning, right? We kind of have to acknowledge that in order to really understand like why these structures are in place, and how they're exploiting people from like a materialism standpoint, because I feel like a movie that I didn't include, which would have been really good, is it's called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. That's a really recent film with Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, and Viola Davis. And that kind of depicts this era of like the entertainment industry from a music industry standpoint, and like how the entertainment industry is built to exploit creative people, or the acts, the attraction, right? It's always, the system is built to extract profit out of that.
Yes.
And so, I just kind of want to point at these films like The Jazz Singer and The Birth of a Nation as like the early history of like where it started, and then pointing to Gummo and Bamboozled as like ways of understanding this history and like how it's applied to our entertainment industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Bamboozled very explicitly, and then I think Gummo like more implicitly.
Yeah.
From like a story standpoint and stuff like that. That's kind of like my backdrop to this episode and why I thought it was important.
Yeah. No, and I'm happy we got here. I'm happy we felt good enough to get here. We've talked about like racism before, because it is just intrinsic in all of these. We talked about it with Hollywood Chinese and Big Trouble in Little China.
Sure, yeah.
And so this is another, we're going to keep hitting this over and over again. And so this will be another interesting, and I'm happy to be talking about Birth of a Nation in this context.
Sure. Yeah.
And Jazz Singer in this context versus like finding some other thing. Like,
to, like,
let's
celebrate
it. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I'd really rather not.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. So yeah, let's start with the Birth of a Nation.
Right there, baby.
Let's start like with the.
You're talking about the 2021? Wait, was it
2016?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you're not.
No, I mean, I wish I was.
Yeah. Yeah. So D.W. Griffith. Is the director. To just start there.
Right, and he is, for film history, like, he is often celebrated as like one of the early greats.
Yes.
And he did have like a mastery of the form.
Yeah.
To be kind of whatever.
Movies started like 20 years before this.
Yeah. He's kind of right there at the beginning. And, you know, if you really look at the film, the form of it all, it's like he's kind of inventing a lot of that technique and stuff. So that's why people like celebrate him as like this kind of pioneer, you know, because there wasn't anything like this, you know.
Yeah, I think
close-ups and coverage and showing big sets and, you know, these things that we do now that we think is so normal. He's kind of like implementing it into his films.
Yeah, it's an insane thought, and sometimes it's a great thought exercise to be like, there was a time where there were no close-ups.
Yeah.
Like that was something they did not do.
Right.
Can you imagine trying to come up with that? Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, to go from no close-up to close-up.
Right.
Like, that was a jump that needed to be made, and it makes me think sometimes about like all the things right now that we can't possibly know.
Right.
That are just like, we'll look back and be like, that was obvious.
Right.
Dummy.
Like why didn't we think of that?
Yeah, why didn't we do that? Why, a lot of times it comes down to like investing in like the stock market or in like Bitcoin. It's like, why didn't I fucking do that in 2014?
Yeah.
That would have been smart, Ryan. You saw this thing, you thought it was stupid. And now look at these, and it's still
kind of stupid.
Yeah. Sorry, but I could be rich and stupid.
Yeah.
Then I could be funding films.
Yeah.
Think about it. Money does solve problems, you guys. I hate to break it to you, because you got to make movies with money, and that we all have a problem, and that's we can't make a movie.
Yeah, that's true. That's the biggest problem.
That's the biggest problem. I hate to break it to you guys. Can we put all the assets of the government into figuring out how to
Bitcoin?
make movies?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Easier?
Can we make a film commission?
Yeah, exactly. Can we get funding for these films, folks? Let's put everyone to work.
Yeah.
That's great.
Don't they like jobs?
That's how we got out of the that was part of getting out of the depression, was like making work.
Yeah.
We just made work.
Yeah.
Because it's
make
made
it
up. It's all made up. We just made all this shit up. Like, if you looked at a video game and you played a video game and it had like a progression system or like some sort of currency in it, and it was bad, and you were like, oh, I'm wasting my time doing this, you would immediately be like, I'm done playing this, or complain to the developer. But here we are. Here we are, a little over 100 years in,
still doing it
into this insane experiment. And it's like, bro, what are we? I got notes for the manager. On this one.
I mean, it seems like pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, you would think. You would think, but they really want it to be complicated.
Yeah. Well, it goes to show, right, that they don't have best interests in mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so here I'm bringing it right back. I'm tying it back. This is how movies like this get made. And obviously this was made way back then. But think about the people that have the money to make movies. Right?
Racists.
Yes. You get people that making money and the act of making money does not make you a good person. And certainly there are plenty, so many bad people that
devil works harder.
Yeah, that are producers of these films that get movies made because they're good at making money. That does not mean they have good values at all or any of these things.
Right.
I think this is an example of D.W. Griffith had skills, does not make him a good person.
Yeah.
He had all of these things, still does not make him a good person.
Yeah.
You absolutely can say D.W. Griffith
Great
knew how
artist.
to do this, like change the game. But you cannot also apply some sort of moral good moral quality to being inventive, right? Like,
sure, yeah. I mean, that's the philosophical question,
yes.
I think, with him specifically, but also with anyone, right? Is like, how do you apply artistry to a person like this?
Yeah.
And like, does their merit like overshadow their shittiness?
Yeah.
I feel like most of the time, no.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'd have a really hard time coming up with, and I'm certainly not asking for us to make like to figure out answers to this question, but like a bad person who is redeemed in their artistic ability. I feel like that's a really
Kanye.
No. Wind it back. I got you,
Woody
folks.
Allen.
I got you, folks. I'm holding the line, folks. Kevin's not breaking me down. I'm not breaking down here.
Fuck.
So D.W. Griffith.
Alex Jones?
That
man is an artist.
Alex Jones, he's an Ozempic boy now. I don't know if you've seen
Is he
him.
really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Damn.
He's lost a lot of weight. He's looking a little Donald Orange.
Oh.
If you ask me. He's got quite a
drinking
look
the Kool-Aid?
now. Yeah.
He's drinking
he's got
Tang?
a Lex Luthor look even more now. It's very interesting.
Yikes.
But he was in Richard Linklater's
He was
Scanner Darkly.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I was gonna say Slacker. But yeah. He was.
Yeah,
which is odd.
they're both
Austin,
Texas. Folks.
Oh yeah. But this was pre.
I mean, he was saying this was early 2000s, so he was saying crazy stuff. But this is like
before he was like Alex Jones.
Yeah. He was definitely the guy who was talking about fluoride in the water for sure, and stuff like that. But
makes sense.
It was like, maybe it worked for that, but yeah, now it's like absolutely insane.
What, you don't believe in the fluoride?
Yeah, folks. I like the shiny teeth that fluoride gives me. American teeth are great. Okay? Let's be real. Anyone? Come on. We want nice teeth. So D.W. Griffith, he's a guy. And he did these things, and he chose to point his camera and to literally make things up for the screen.
Yeah.
And create some really vile caricatures.
Yeah.
Involved people in this really gross act. Forcing and coercing black people to portray themselves as idiots and stupid.
Yeah.
And evil. It's pretty wild that, because, and we'll get into more of this, but there is, there is something about the camera that is, and maybe like, there's something about like, they used to talk about like, especially in like tribes that had never been connected or contacted or things, and just different cultures. Picture stole your soul, right? And there was something about that, and I tend to think I see some of that in some of this, which is like, or in the act of filmmaking, because there is something that is done when you choose to point your camera at a thing, and I think this will come into play a little more in Gummo. But for example, we all know what it's like when you're doing something and maybe something funny happened, and then someone's like, "Oh, I want to film that," or maybe they pull out their camera, they didn't get it in time, and maybe sometimes they ask you, "Hey, can you do that again?" And you do it again.
And it's not the same.
It's not. But what I'm kind of getting at is like that the filming has now made you do something that you wouldn't have done. Right. Then there's the actual like asking this person like, hey, can you do this thing for me in front of a camera? Then there is just this implicitness that happens when a camera is pointed at you. We kind of all know like, hey, we're involved in something right now. We're involved in a relationship. There is something going on. So we might do something a little longer because we don't want to upset the person behind the thing. We want to play into this act of filming or whatever, or this event. And I see how, and I see how a lot of these things, especially when it comes to like what happens in Gummo, of just like, a little bit of, I don't know if taking advantage is the right way to put it.
Totally.
But it is like it's having these people act in certain ways. Maybe it's not how they'd always act, but if a camera's pointed onto them, they'll act a little more. Yeah. They'll do these things. It's hard to say what's real and what isn't. Mm-hmm. And so you get that. And what I'm kind of like getting at is like with Birth of a Nation, having like black people act in it and act in these certain ways, like they were expected to be there on set at a certain time. Like, I don't know if they had call sheets back then, but they had a call time. They had to be there. Like they spent their day.
Someone directed them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they were forced to do that. Maybe it was monetarily, maybe it wasn't. Maybe there was just an implicit like, oh, you'll get something out of it, or this, that, and the other thing. They almost certainly were taken advantage of, because that's just that's the nature of this business too. Yeah. Is it is built on the backs of these things. It's extremely exploitive.
I mean, when we look at Wizard of Oz, it's like, holy shit.
You're talking about like the
backstory behind it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Every character, it feels. I mean, especially
there's like horrors. Yeah. With that movie.
Yeah. And so there is something just interesting about how filmmaking can be like a prison. Can be like something that can capture you. Mm-hmm. A photograph that steals your soul. Mm-hmm. It certainly takes time out of you, but it also you are selling a part of yourself. Yeah. Because a movie is more than a movie. Mm-hmm. Like it's not just like something you watch and then it's gone forever. Right. Like to think that anything is like that. It's like saying, like sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Mm-hmm. Like that's like something you tell a kid to just help them get through something. Right. But we all know words mean something. Right. Like you or else
you can't deny that.
Yeah, you can't deny that. Yeah. Like there are things people can say to you that will hurt your feelings. Right. For example. Right. And that's not.
It cuts deep.
Yeah. And there's no reason to lie about that either, and to hide that.
Right.
And so.
And you can see how this film is like. Because when we talk about the Letterboxd 250 and like the spirituality of film and the purity of like what this art form can do and express and the stories that it can tell and the characters that it can portray, like this to me feels like the direct opposite of that. Yeah. Where it's like tainted and impure, and it's using the art form to create like the complete opposite message of that, you know? Yeah. Like taking out the spirituality of life and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Like prejudice and racism and stuff.
Yeah. And what's crazy is like all of those things, they then promoted it.
Right.
You know, there's like it goes so much more beyond that. Like they were putting ads and things for people to see it. It affected the world. It created the new interpretation of the Ku Klux Klan. Right. All of these things. Like I think the white robes weren't even a thing before this movie. Right. Like we're talking about like
it invented the KKK.
Yeah. Like it's the way we understand it today. Yeah. It's insane. And so that's what, when we're saying how important movies are, yes, they're important, and just like you can learn a lot of really interesting things about other people and empathy and things like that through it, but it also actually can affect things. Right. Because
how powerful it is. Yeah.
Real people are involved, and real people are trying to get you interested. Right. And then you turn your life force towards it and you interact with it and you feel something from it.
100%.
And that's
because we live in the shadow of this movie.
We absolutely do. Yes.
You know, the effects of what this movie did to our country. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. We absolutely do.
Trump is like a direct descendant of this film. I feel like just like what his message is and what he's trying to do with our like democracy and stuff.
And I will say on the president standpoint, this was the first movie ever shown in the White House.
Well, goddamn.
Yeah, I think Woodrow Wilson was the president at the time, and he had D.W. Griffith come in and show the film. I mean, just crazy. Like it was welcomed, it was celebrated. Though there was, it's good to hear.
It had pushback.
There was pushback. Yeah. And he did like really fight against it. And so much so that like at least in versions you can see online do have this thing that
the warning.
Yeah. But, I'm not talking about. Are you talking about like a modern day warning? Like, hey, this is like a. I mean,
no,
like
the film itself.
Yeah. D.W. Griffith put in something like, we did this because we want to help the world or whatever. Like
some stupid fucking thing.
It's so bullshit. It's just a.
And then has like an interview with someone.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I forgot about that.
In the intermission? Too?
Yeah. I think, that wasn't the version I saw, but I have seen that before.
The one I saw, I don't know if I had ever seen, I don't think I've ever actually watched this movie in full.
Yeah.
So this was like, I was like, whoa, this is wild.
Yeah.
Wild. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so...
Just everything about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's absolutely insane. It goes to places that movies really shouldn't go.
Yeah. Just building
insulting.
narratives that portray Black people as villains or stupid or incompetent. Creates a lot of the stereotypes, like the watermelon, the chicken stealing, like kind of drinking at the job. Like a lot of these things that are instituted into our culture today. Yeah. The race, at least from a racism standpoint, it's like, it's all here. It's like spelled out, you know?
It's crazy. We live in a long line of racists that created this country and have been involved in every step of the way. Yeah. And it's quite sad that it has gotten to this point and then it continues on.
'Cause I mean, you know, it's not too far along that Gone with the Wind comes out too, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it seems like a sequel to this.
Yeah. At least it doesn't have blackface.
Yeah. Like, but I mean, the way they portray their characters are not any better. Yeah.
Yeah. And it shows even the sign of the times that the woman that played Mammy in Gone with the Wind won an Oscar.
I know.
But then ended up being like...
not even able to attend ceremonies.
Yeah, couldn't even attend the ceremonies. Got nothing even closely compared to like... Because...
the pay.
Yeah, the pay or anything. Like at least she has some emotional core in that movie and delivers a really... The line that when I watched it, just made me cry immediately about like the burying the child, afraid of the dark, that line when she's walking up the stairs. But I mean, it's like that's like the pinnacle of her career was like that scene and that scene alone. And then got nothing after that. I mean, it's just like, it shows
exploitation, like, right?
Exactly. That's what it was. And it's for a laugh.
Right.
Most of the time.
No, exactly.
And especially with Birth of a Nation, that's what you're supposed to get. I'm supposed to laugh at this.
It's supposed to be like a comedy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. And so,
it is wild.
Yeah, there's, this is the beginning of a lot of epic films and D.W. Griffith will go on to make Intolerance after this in response to, in a lot of ways, to this.
Yep.
And
Broken Blossoms.
Broken Blossoms as well. And these are all...
Yellowface.
Yep. And all three of these movies are considered classics.
Yeah.
And they are huge movies to the entire film
world. Yeah.
World.
Yeah.
So,
still talked about today. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
In all the good and bad ways. Yeah, he's interesting. I mean, you know, he's obviously not great, but you know, he was a part of United Artists.
Yep.
So like, at least in terms of being an independent director or whatever that means, he's doing something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Like the DGA had an award named after him for a long time.
Yeah.
So I feel like it just goes to show how conflicted he is within our kind of collective memory, you know?
Yeah. And I think people don't really want to talk about this.
Right.
They don't really want to acknowledge, it sucks to talk, like to always feel bad about these things, but you got to know where you come from or else nothing, like it's like the D.W. Griffith Award. Really, there's no other really good directors that you can point to.
Right.
Like that
there's got to be more.
There are more folks. Like you're kind of just holding on to something just for the sake of holding on to it, which is also a huge problem. It's just like, I don't like, not even like critically thinking ever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to acknowledge and, you know, I like think about it and yeah. Like you said, you can't really learn if you don't like confront it to some extent. Yeah.
So I'm happy we watched it.
Yeah, it was a good one. I mean, it's a long movie, dude.
It was long.
It was very laborious.
Yeah, that one took a lot out of me.
Yeah.
3 hours.
Yikes.
Not getting that back.
Yeah, ever again.
Well, let's go to a short one. 89 minutes. The Jazz Singer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, important in film history as well.
Yeah.
Because of its placement within sound and talkies. Because obviously before 1927, silent films were pretty much the basis of this art form. And so jazz singer introduces, like we said, sound as like a thing.
Yeah. And think about it. It's similar to close-ups. It's similar to these things like
these things are invented.
Yeah. They didn't know how to incorporate sound yet.
Right.
Like, and not even not even from a technical standpoint. Obviously, they had to figure that out. And that's a little more straightforward. I bet someone had already been kind of thinking about that at a certain point.
Sure, yeah.
But then if you're limited, if you looked at a movie and you had never used sound before and you're like, okay, we can do it a couple times.
Right.
To think
just from like a financial standpoint.
Exactly. And to think like, all right, what kind of movie do we make? What kind of things do we do that where we know we can do that? This is kind of what you come up with, right? Is something musical. That there's something musical about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, so it's entertainment focused and all of that.
Yeah, I think this one really directly shows like minstrel shows as like an art form and like how it was kind of instituted in our society, so to speak, like early entertainment stuff, like people going to bars and like performing at like little venues and stuff like that. But yeah, it kind of sneaks up on you at the end. Like it's not really forefronted. The story is like more revolving around this character being a jazz artist and like rebelling against conservative family values. And then it kind of slips into the minstrel stuff, like right at the end.
Yeah, it's just a given that he, like when he's talking about doing this big, like there on the horizon is this big performance he's going to be a part of and all of this. Yeah. You have no idea what it's going to be. And then all of a sudden he's putting on blackface. It was crazy. And it's like, whoa, what the fuck? Just shows like it was just kind of secondhand. Yeah. You know, you're expected just
how
to believe
normalized that is in society back then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, I think.
Yeah, because kind of the origin, like what originates blackface is that like theater shows were racist again, like didn't want black people involved in a lot of these shows, so they just had white people play black people using blackface, which is like insane. It's the same kind of thing as like not having women in theaters, so they had men play women. Like the most bizarre way of like being inclusive. Yeah,
anyways. It's so weird, isn't it? It's just like wow, the hoops that you're jumping through.
And then now you're now doing drag.
Yeah. It's so strange.
Yeah, very weird.
Yeah, a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to these things.
Yeah.
But I agree with you about the jazz singer. It was just kind of a movie.
Yeah. Just kind of did its thing and then hopped the fuck out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like it didn't seem like there was too much. There was obviously that kind of bit at the end, the emotional bit when he is completely in blackface and everything like that. But yeah, the story is super straightforward. Kind of like what's more important, family or fame. And going the family route, as movies will do quite often nowadays. I'd be curious if that was like a twist or anything at that point. I'm not sure. Because, I mean, that's also a crazy thing to look back at some of these old movies and be like, was this the first time they did this sort of thing? Like what, but so many movies were made back then. We can't even comprehend in some ways. Like directors were directing like 100.
Right.
And
so much is lost.
Yeah. We'll never know.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
These things that we kind of understand as like history is just like things we're being told by like people. Yeah. Yeah.
We get it secondhand, third hand, fourth hand.
Right.
And then we get the jazz singer.
Yeah. I wrote on the jazz singer, kind of my run-on sentence. A story of rejecting conservative, religious, traditional, societal constructions in exchange for a liberated personal identity, and perverts it with undertones of prejudice and class hierarchy, that the punishment for abandoning the haven of God is to perform on stage as a black man, insinuating an anti-black sentiment permanent within Hollywood and the entertainment industry, especially given the fact that the advent of jazz was predominantly attributed to black musicians of the time.
Yeah. Spot on.
Just like so complex within history, knowing jazz, knowing racism, knowing all these things.
I hadn't thought about the fact that like what it meant. Because part of me felt like it was the minstrel show aspect was just like an afterthought, or like it just was. But do you think like they intentionally?
I feel like there was a little bit of like
it certainly
some
plays
passive aggressive.
Certainly, yeah.
But
I just part of me feels like did they have? But maybe they just thought like that all the time, that it just wasn't a thing. Like
I just feel like that's the way they look at life.
Totally.
Yeah, you know what
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Dirty.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so there you go. Very interesting use of sound.
Yeah.
Okay. Compliment sandwich.
Shout out close-ups. Shout out sound.
Yes, exactly. Close-ups, sound. Now we fast forward 50 years.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, before we do that,
Sure.
I forgot about Birth of the Nation. Like one good thing, I remember there's like that hospital scene. I just remember being like really interesting the way they shot that.
Yeah.
And maybe I think that was where the close-ups were being like used and stuff. But yeah, I just remember that scene being like, oh wow, this looks really nice.
Yeah.
For like an old movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, okay, now we can move on.
All right, that's 1 point for Birth of a Nation, folks. Okay. All right, next up. Sorry, I'm getting this out of there.
Yeah.
Where I'm about to fast forward 50 years, and it's gonna hurt. Get ready.
Yeah.
And here we are in the DeLorean.
Some whiplash.
We just got out of the theater. We just saw Gummo. 1997 Harmony. Is it Korine?
Harmony Korine, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to read this thing to give it just the briefest of synopses. Solomon and Tumblr are two teenagers killing time in Xenia, Ohio, a small town that has never recovered from the tornado that ravaged the community in the 1970s. So yeah, that's the skeleton. And then you get a film that blurs the line between documentary and fiction. Certainly has very obvious and very clear, not psychological, but like imaginary elements that are very clearly fictitious. I'm thinking about like that bunny character, that's kind of wearing the Donnie Darko-esque, like outfit thing.
Yeah.
Very clear, like that. There's something about that's kind of more than
the film.
Than the film.
Yeah.
That isn't a part of the story at all from like a literal standpoint.
Right.
It doesn't move the plot forward, but it is saying something.
Right.
And so you have all of these different aspects of the film. You have like a story laid on top of things that were filmed of events.
Right.
And then you kind of have like that thread of...
There's like real people.
Yeah.
Totally.
Which is interesting.
Like connecting different things onto each other.
Yeah, because I think if it was just those first two, and let's say that bunny character wasn't even in it,
right?
It is less than. It is just like kind of like it's kind of these things bouncing back and forth, but to kind of add it into context with that, it's almost like a string that kind of sews it together a bit more. And so I appreciated kind of being left with something to think about, which I like leaving a movie and be like, oh, okay, there's
like Altman-esque.
Yeah, there's something there that I can chew on a little bit. It wasn't so, there was a lot about this movie that had that. It definitely was. It was surface level gross, surface level insulting and vile. But it does feel like, and maybe it's even just strung together. I mean, it's the voiceover. Is there music in this?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
there's definitely like musical parts and like stuff, like people singing.
All that together.
Like people start singing, right? There's like singing parts.
Yeah, I think so.
Like that one girl.
It's not a musical, folks.
Not like a musical.
Not like that. Yeah.
It's definitely episodic, this whole thing.
Yeah.
Where we start seeing different people in different settings and then like different situations. But yeah, there is like, I guess, semi-strong protagonists that like help guide us through the world.
Yeah.
Because it does, like you said, docufiction, right? Like there's like archival stuff. There's like things that it looks like were shot like on a Super 8 or like a digital camera or something. And then there's stuff that feel deliberately like acted.
Yeah.
And then there's stuff that are just feel like real people with a camera in the room that are like wilding out, you know? So, and it is interesting trying to figure out like what's real, what's not, and like seeing how it all kind of blends together.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really thinking about the form and how it's put together.
Right. Yeah.
It's very interesting. Very cool Shav effectian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like let's throw all this into the mix and tie it together, and what do you really get?
Right. Yeah, I really enjoy this film because it's like contrasting in that it's somewhat poetic to me in the construction of it, but it's depicting like the grotesque nature of our kind of national society. Yeah. In a lot of ways. It's like a really scathing take on who we are, you know? Yeah. And at least at the underbelly of like our society and stuff. And so, yeah, to kind of circle back on that point. Yeah. Where what made you like feel like this was odd man out?
Yeah. Well, it obviously it didn't have blackface. I think that was one thing. That was a clear surface level thing. Sure. I think that there's also was no out and about like racism in some ways. Obviously, I'm pretty sure there were the N-word was dropped and there were
about stuff.
Yeah, and then there were some black kids that were portrayed in a negative light. Yeah, but you could say that it wasn't like systemic through the entire film, so it could be said in a couple different ways. Sure. But yeah, no, it felt like Bamboozled was the end cap a little bit to this thing, and we'll get there. And it feels like an answer to the first two films. Mm-hmm. And it is in a lot of ways. I mean, they even know that because it even shows clips at the end. Right. There's a montage at the end of Bamboozled that I think is what makes it art. Yeah. Because, it has all these clips from the past, and then there's so much more context added right there at the end. It's like getting this download of history. Right. And so those felt like a package, and then Gummo comes in. Yeah. And it's told in a different form. Altogether. Like everything is different. It's not explicitly talking about race. Mm-hmm. It's more, I mean, I guess, what is it? I mean, I could ask this about any movie, but like, what is it really? What's the first thing it's saying? Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I don't know. It's almost like this kind of like just time passing is how it just feels in a way. Mm-hmm. Like there's just, and maybe it's almost like how this place feels like a vortex of time. Right. Where it's just kind of tornado. Like, it's just like kind of empty and lost. And there's so many scenes of people just kind of sitting around. Right. And people just are hanging out and talking or breaking chairs or sitting, like there's
shooting cats.
Yeah, there's not a lot of getting from here to there.
Right. There is absolutely zero story in this movie. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there is a little bit like connected
episodically.
But exactly. Yeah. There definitely is no. Yeah. Plot. I certainly don't think any character learned anything. Maybe. I think that you could say what's the main kid's name? Soul or
Solomon.
Yeah. Yeah. He is a very interesting character in it, and like there is something that it feels like maybe comes through there at the end, but it's just so interesting what the movie's trying to say. And so I think those were like the things. It just felt like it was saying something different than all the other ones. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and then. Did you already during this episode? Because we I don't think so. Have you talked about like why
Not
this
yet.
fits in? Yeah. Do you want to drop the bomb?
Yeah, I forget exactly how I worded it to you that other night, but I definitely when I think about this, why I created this series, I feel like Bamboozled is like a contemporary response to like the jazz singer, and to me, Gummo is like a contemporary response to Birth of a Nation, right? And I like it. I might be reaching. I don't know. But I feel like in a lot of ways, Birth of a Nation created the world that Gummo like is. You know what I mean? Like this is a product of that kind of thinking and like what a lot of that kind of stuff brings, you know? Like we get like this really rundown like Midwest town, and there's no industry, there's no opportunity, like kind of drawing the effects of racism and exploitation and that affecting everyone and not just like negatively affecting Black people or, you know, whatever. It's affecting our country, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, like Gummo represents like that sentiment of like the effects of this kind of country that we built, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like, you know, when you hitch your horse to Birth of a Nation. Yeah. That's it. And this is the message you want and everything. And I try not to like, you know, I am definitely a belief. Yeah. And I'm definitely under the belief like a tax system's not people in a lot of cases.
No, exactly. That's what I mean though. Systematically you get from here to here. Yes. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like this thinking brings you to this point. Yeah. Because that's how we get from here. You know what I mean? Like from here to here. Yeah. And then also like subtly, contextually, like Gummo is showing like a ghost of this era of entertainment. Like there's old vaudeville characters like in Gummo dancing in that basement with the sun. Like that was kind of like a minstrel-esque like thing. And there's certain elements of Gummo that feel like vaudevillistic, you know what I mean? Like just in terms of like these little mini shows, these little mini entertainment things. Yeah. You're showing like people you wouldn't see in normal life in a vaudeville sort of construction. You know? So that's kind of how I interpret it too. Yeah. In some ways. Yeah.
Damn. That's such an interesting thing. I genuinely think, Kevin, that this is a very you connection to make. Like, I'd be really curious how many people have like
drawn that
connected
line.
those lines. I just find it very interesting. I think that it's just a very, it's because you're someone that has watched Gummo probably a lot of times.
Yeah. Like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. Definitely studying it a lot.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting perspective on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just really enjoy this movie and along the lines of like American absurdity. Yeah. This kind of is falling in line with like Nashville and like that kind of stuff for me. Yeah. Just like heavy critiques of American society.
Yeah, that's I guess that is what it's painting the most of. Yeah. Is that by just virtue of pointing the camera at it. Right.
Totally.
Yeah. Why'd they have to kill cats though?
Yeah, I know. It's just like, fuck.
I remember you telling me like, you're like, you said something along the lines of like, I know you won't like this movie. Yeah. And I was always just like, why would Kevin feel that way? Like, I'm pretty open about things. And I'm like, wait a second. And then I watched it and then I was like, oh,
it's like attacking things you value
the most. But
that's art, baby.
I got through it because I was like, it's a movie that has an ending. Yeah. And it's now in the...
It's in the bank.
Yep, it's in the bank.
Yeah. It's come in CS. It's just very in your face. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the last one.
Shall we move along?
Yep. Bamboozled, Spike Lee.
Yep.
Year 2000. Pre 9/11. That's always an interesting time.
I know. It's crazy. 2000.
Yeah, right?
It's wild.
So... And I kind of went over it some more, but just the brief description. Frustrated when network brass reject his sitcom idea, producer Pierre Delacroix pitches the worst idea he can think of in an attempt to get fired a 21st century minstrel show. The network not only airs it, but it becomes a smash hit.
Crazy.
It is so... And this is what I enjoy from movies most of the time, is like ones that are willing to go there.
Right.
Take the next step. no matter how insane it is. And having an entire audience of a live show wearing blackface because it's like the fad now. Blackface is the fad.
Right.
Is insane.
He got people to do that.
I know. Yeah, that's the other thing. Is like Spike Lee got like people spent their day
putting
in blackface and acted like. Can you imagine that? And that's also what I'm talking about with like
it becomes a meta
as, like,
thing, right?
It is like you are taking time out of your life,
right, to build
a
this
finite
thing.
amount of time, and this is the thing that is being done that you can never put back. I don't know. It's such an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. But it was so interesting, and a lot of people are coming around to this film now. It was definitely underrated back then, but
sure,
I've read some things. Yeah, and it feels like we're closer to a minstrel show now than we've been in a long time. Like I could imagine some streamer on Kick or some website doing something like that. Like really what's stopping people from doing blackface?
Nothing.
Like we're getting real close, you guys. Like we're getting really close to getting that back. Like that, it's really not far. Like I could absolutely see with how everything else is degrading around and just being like how quickly will Disney put on their own minstrel show? I don't know. Like I think that's definitely tougher. But I'm telling you, there is new media, and I think new media
has the balls.
Has if they're called balls, whatever they are, they've got the ability and the drive to, because talk about what a viral hit that would be for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean the show already shows it, right?
Yeah. It's just like that's what felt so true about it was like, of course,
just
this
like
would be
the novelty of it being crazy. Yeah.
And like, it's kind of it's a little unbelievable that obviously it's a movie, but it's a little unbelievable that like network audiences would get down with it. But in today's day and age with the internet, they will find enough people to enjoy a minstrel show. Yeah. Like that would
just
be
1,000's enough to be crazy. Yeah.
Think about that. Like we're
not that far off.
We really aren't. So that was another thing. When I watched it, I was just like, dang, that is. It felt very Nostradamus like, of kind of seeing it, and that's naturally what happens when you have like a political thing to say, and it's rooted in truth,
right?
You know, and it's rooted in just factual things and oppression. Usually, like you can start to see that this is something that goes into everything, and of course we'll be back here.
I mean, I don't know exactly, but I feel like you could find people who draw a line, like who could relate this film to like modern day hip hop, and how like I don't know, just like the idea of like painting black people as gangsters and drug dealers and all that stuff feels like minstrel show-y, like a caricature of like these types of people. And then like how similar to this film where like success kind of warrants like bad behavior if it's like monetized, and like how this idea can be kind of like perverted into like an industry sort of a thing. And I think there are people who look at like the way pop industry utilizes hip hop as like a dangerous like exploitative thing, you know. And I think there's an interesting like read there. Just like how this relates to the way entertainment industry like sees black bodies and stuff like that.
I absolutely see that. I feel that when you have an industry that's run by white people generally, you're going to get things like that. And I think Michael Rapaport, in one of the very few roles
that he does well,
but
it does feel perfect for his personality. Yeah,
I think that it worked out really well, and I just thought it was like is it Jada? Yeah, Jada Pinkett Smith. Was great in it as well. You got a little Mos Def in there briefly.
As the rapper guy.
Yep. And it was just really interesting. And another one that I like movies about shows and movies and kind of the entertainment industry. So you get a lot of that and what it means to sell your soul. And like Pierre Delacroix's father, like tells like racist jokes for money. And that's how he makes a living, and he's done it for decades.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that grounds the satire of this into a real world example.
Yes, I completely agree.
Like
as soon as it went there, it's like, oh, yeah.
Because there is that narrative of like people not liking Kevin Hart because he's not like woke. Like he's not socially aware. Like he's not using comedy to like critique society.
Yeah.
Like in the way that like, Dave Chappelle is very critical of society despite his fucking fucked up beliefs.
Yes.
Sometimes. But like other, like Chris Rock or, Eddie Murphy, like they will use comedy to like comment on society and like blackness, and so people will critique Kevin Hart for like not being that, and like there's like this idea of like being black in America, you need to be aware of these things, especially being in the entertainment industry. I don't know. I feel like this film is commenting on that in that way.
What's your responsibility kind of in it?
For sure. Especially in that within the last like act, right? When the things start to get bigger than him. And get distorted and and the actors are people too that are struggling with it and putting the blackface on. What does that mean? Like historically.
That reminds me, the music in this was so good. That was another thing that really blew it out of the water. It was just like, it was subtle enough and sweet in its way.
Like bittersweet.
It was done so well. The form was great.
I agree. It definitely a nice end cap to all of this.
It was
like a good taste in the mouth.
Exactly. And it had that montage at the end with all of these clips, and I'm happy they showed it at the end and not at the beginning.
Right. Because then that would have been cheap.
It would have, it felt like, that it feels like it's earned at the end.
Right.
Because now they've already made a movie that I was like, this is good. And I like it, and they already said, and then this is just like
says something. Totally.
And it also just felt like very unique and original to do something like that. I think a lot of directors wouldn't do something like that.
Right. Damien Chazelle did.
With what? Which one?
With Babylon.
Babylon. You talk a lot about Babylon.
Another conflicted film, I think, for me. Because I didn't really like it when I watched it, but it comes up a lot.
Yeah, it really does. That's an interesting thing. Yeah.
Because it is film history.
Yeah.
And it's based off a book. It's based off like real stories and stuff. And it definitely documents a lot of what we just talked about.
Yeah.
The exploitation of people and like stealing dreams, stealing your soul. The ending of careers, the transitioning of industry.
That's spot on.
Yeah.
That's what we talk about all the time.
Yeah, this whole day.
Every day.
Every day. Yeah, literally. Yeah, maybe I'll need to rewatch it. I definitely maybe didn't get a good rep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I also don't like Damien Chazelle's movies.
Yeah. I do want to watch La La Land again.
Yeah.
I am interested. Because I fell in love with it when I saw it. Like, I was under its spell.
I definitely did too.
Yeah.
I definitely liked it when it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really... Like, I think Emma Stone's charisma just gets me every time.
It still has that magic.
It's still,
yeah. But I think from a filmmaking standpoint, I just didn't like a lot of his choices as a director. But that's another episode.
That is the Damien Chazelle episode. Who wants to listen to that?
Nobody.
Yeah, wow, that might be the most insulting thing I've ever said.
Yeah, well, that's that for racism in entertainment industry.
In the industry.
Vaudeville and minstrel shows. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very much a part of all of this.
Yeah. What's your wrap up for this?
Yeah, I think that for one, I'm happy I watched them all. Like, I'm happy I watched them in this context. It added a lot of depth and understanding to feel it, to know kind of the discussion we're going to go into, and I'm happy to have worn those glasses for this. Mm-hmm. And I think that I like Harmony Korine's take on what he's trying to say, and I especially like Spike Lee's take on his version of events. And it makes me really excited to see what other kind of things can be done to kind of rail against this. What is it going to be like when all of this balloons again? I think that this episode in general, like, I mean, you just can't escape that film history is so important and is wrapped in everything, and that Birth of a Nation is connected all the way to the top. The jazz singer is connected all the way to the top in a lot of ways, and you need to know it all to be able to gain some context. And
totally,
yeah. And I think not a lot of people watch Birth of a, not a lot of people watch these 4 movies together.
Yeah, and
so that's another thing as I appreciate. So I thank you for throwing this quad.
Yeah,
I'm tossing the quad.
This was one that I was like super excited about and hoping we would get to, and I'm glad we did it at this time too. I feel like we needed 35 episodes to like get into this point as well, like more context on the history and everything.
If we did like Birth of a Nation as like our first episode.
We were just a baby.
Yeah. You know, D.W. Griffiths, he
Yeah, no, it's great. I think it's helpful to understanding the 100-year history of cinema.
Yeah.
In this context as well. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then we got to see it, and then we got to watch some people stab it.
Yeah.
And that felt good.
Yeah.
It also was a cathartic viewing experience.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Because you don't want to just like watch Birth of a Nation as like a standalone thing. I think.
Yeah, that would have sucked.
That would have been a tough episode.
Yeah, that would have been like,
to
damn,
extract 20 minutes of that.
Clicking onto that.
Yeah.
Not that we do it for clicks, but it's just like, God, even I wouldn't want to like look at that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, oh.
Yeah, so it was a good, nice little conversation. Thanks for indulging me in this.
No, I appreciate it.
This is great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
right on, folks. You want to send us off, Kev?
Looks like that's a wrap.
Bye.
Bye.
Wind Reel and Print is a podcast by Salad Brain Productions. You can find us online on Instagram at Wind Reel and Print Pod. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. And please, if you like the show, leave a rating and review. We'll see you next time.